right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining, appreciate it. I'm Rob from Energy. I have the privilege of managing the cloud operations team there. What we want to talk about today is a question that sounds simple until you have actually answered in a real company. We are spending money on AI, but how do we govern that spend and explain whether it's actually creating value?
And I'm Kevin with SHI, and the reason why we selected this talk for FinOps X is because most teams are already beyond the experimentation stage. They have real workloads, they have real expectations, they have real stakeholders, and they're quickly figuring out that enthusiasm and evidence are not the same thing.
Exactly. You can have executive interest, active use cases, meaningful usage, and still not have a clean answer to some basic questions. What does it really cost? Who owns it? What are we getting back? Should we keep funding it? So this is not going to be a hype session. This is going to be a working session disguised as a conference talk. We're going to show the governance model, the decision model, and the reporting approach that used to make this conversation more credible.
And because we're doing this in public, we're going to be disciplined about what we can and cannot share. But with that limitation, that we still think that we have a very usable operating model.
Let me start with who is on stage and why the two of us are doing this together. I sit on the energy side, closer to operational reality. So my instinctive questions are like, what are these AI capabilities actually doing in production? How often are they being used? Where are they helping? And where are they adding complexity and cost?
And I come from the FinOps and governance side with a slightly different lens. I'm asking, where is the spend showing up? What parts of the model are direct versus what are shared? What can be attributed cleanly? And what would finance or leadership need to see before they can trust the value story? The reason why these two lenses are important is that one without the other creates problems. So if finance is looking at the program by itself, you're going to get a very blunt cost story without a lot of context. And if operations is looking at it by themselves, you're going to get a very heavy activity story.
Right, and in this case, neither lens was enough because this was not a single neat AI product, a single meter, and a single owner. It was two AI-enabled service experiences plus a shared intelligence layer running across multiple delivery patterns and supporting multiple kinds of work.
Which means the hard part wasn't collecting the data. The hard part was getting to one answer that operations, FinOps, and finance could all defend. And I'm going to be super honest, I wasn't paying attention when she asked how many people were already managing their AI environments. So just quick raise of hands. Nice.
So here's the path we're going to take. We're going to keep the early framing fairly tight because I know there's a lot of AI sessions. You don't need me to tell you for 10 minutes how important AI is. What we do want to spend time on is where AI cost governance gets tricky, what the real energy problem looked like, how we structured the work, what kinds of issues surfaced, and what it takes to build an ROI process that leadership can actually use.
And then we'll close with a practical operating model with some specific actions that you can take back to your own environment. We're deliberately leaving room at the end for questions because some of the most interesting discussion comes out in the edge cases.
Before we go any further, we should be very clear about the boundaries of the session. Because of investor relations and disclosure constraints, we cannot share internal cost numbers, savings numbers, ROI numbers, budget details, or named product level information the way we might in a private working session. This is why you'll also hear us talk about two AI-enabled service experiences in a shared intelligence layer instead of naming individual products or talking through the exact functional breakdown. This is not us being vague for effect. That is an intentional disclosure boundary.
But here's the important part. That does not make the talk any less valuable. In some ways, it actually makes it a little more helpful, because a lot of organizations are in exactly this position. They need a credible governance model before they are comfortable publishing detailed outcomes broadly. So what we can share is the operating model. We can talk about the cost visibility, attribution, optimization, business metrics, evidence maturity, and how decisions get made. We can also talk about the data we already had, the data we still needed, and then how we handled that gap without pretending the answer was more precise than it really was.
In other words, we're not here to reveal a headline number. We are here to show how to build a number that you can actually trust later.
By the way, this button is a laser. If you press it, nothing happens other than just FYI. AI adoption is moving faster than AI financial management.
You're not caught up. This is not our fault.
You'd be surprised how much time we spent down here. What? Oh, okay, we're waiting. That's my boss, by the way, so I'm going to do what he said. What's that? I think this is it, right? Or do they need us to start from the very beginning? Nope. Anybody know any good jokes? Good FinOps jokes?
Terrible at telling jokes.
What's that?
I'm terrible at telling jokes.
I always thought like the dream gig would be to come to like an IT conference or, FinOps conference and just be able to tell jokes. Where's Lucas? Is Lucas here? What governance means to me is essentially, what are the guardrails? Like, what are the mechanisms that you've put in place to guide things the way you want them to guide to keep things from going off the rails? Now, here's the thing. You're asking the question, people kind of chuckled, because it's probably one of the most ambiguous words that we use in our community, right? So there's governance in terms of like security type governance, there's spin governance, there's all kinds of different governance. In my mind, it's what are you doing to keep things from going off the rails? And in some ways, you're having to essentially imagine all of the bad things that can happen. It's like a risk management type of operation, right? What bad could go wrong? Where do people go off the rails? And how do we keep that from happening? So in some ways, it could just be policy. Like, I'm going to assume you're going to read the policy. You're not going to read it. But I'm going to write a policy. I'm going to assume you read it, and you're going to follow what it says. Or I'm going to put some code in place that keeps you from doing things I don't want you to do. What does it mean to you? Since we got time. So I don't know if y'all could hear what he said. One of the things he said is engineers don't like restrictions. What? Preventions. I don't either. I don't know anybody who does. Like, this is the thing. I want to be able to do anything I want to do. I just don't want you to be able to do anything you want to do.
Exactly.
Am I wrong? And so that's how governance works. Is like you have to somehow balance, like, okay, I need people to be able to function, and I want people to, be happy. I want them to want to stay at their job. I want them to want to get up and go to work in the morning. So I don't want to make their life difficult, because that doesn't help anybody. At the same time, I've been around people a long time. And I know people sometimes wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to do something creative, and it wasn't really the best idea in the world. So, like, you've got to figure out where that mix is to keep people from doing things that are going to be harmful, whether it's to themselves or to others.
Looks like we're making progress. One thing I would add to the governance is that one thing that we found is,
Oh, yeah, come on.
we're all just working on it with AI, right? It's all new. And obviously my team does a lot of the guardrails. And there's so much pressure to put AI product out. Nobody wants governance, right? Nobody wants governance. So it makes it actually a lot harder.
I think we're back up.
Okay.
But AI is responsible for this whole thing. So AI adoption is moving faster than AI financial management is. The executive question shows up almost immediately. Sometimes it is framed fairly politely, sometimes not so much. But where we get to is, you're spending money on this now, is it worth it? The reason why that question is hard is that most teams don't have a consistent view of full cost, fair attribution, and business outcomes tied together in a single place.
Which means different stakeholders can all tell a true but incomplete version of the story. Engineering sees enablement, operations sees a workflow change, finance sees spend, leadership sees expectations. And until those views connect, ROI is more of a debate than a decision tool.
And that's the problem we're trying to get out of.
AI exposes where your existing FinOps model is too shallow for this kind of workload.
So you have shared services, bursty demand, multiple pricing units, model choice questions, managed services, API-driven usage, SaaS layers, cases where the same intelligence layer is delivering on more experience at the same time. So the ownership model gets more complex, and the business value conversation gets more important, and that changes the FinOps job.
Exactly. It means the FinOps has to get better at TCO, attribution, unit economics, and business value mapping. If your view stops at the cloud bill or even at the platform dashboard, you still do not know enough to govern the program.
So most AI financial problems show up in some combination of these core conditions. So either something is untagged, it's unattributed, it's unmeasured, or it's ungoverned. Now, the positive side of this is it keeps you from like jumping to the wrong solution too quickly. So let's say something's untagged. Well, maybe the solution is metadata. Let's say something's unattributed. So maybe the answer is you need a better allocation strategy. If it's unmeasured, then maybe the problem is there's a KPI gap. And if it's ungoverned, then chances are you need better governance, better policies and process rather than like expanded or additional tooling. In our case, the shared intelligence layer made attribution particularly important. One layer could support multiple business-facing functions, which meant that a simple one resource, one owner view would not tell the entire truth.
And once that happens, every team can honestly believe it is looking at the same program while still seeing a different answer. Operations may see adoption. Finance may see aggregate spend. Product sees customer value. Leadership may see strategic urgency. If those answers are not connected, the organization starts to substitute confidence for evidence, which is usually when people say things like, we know this is valuable, we just can't measure it yet.
So this framework helped us turn that vague feeling into a more specific diagnosis of what was actually missing.
So what was the actual NRG ask? The short version is that we already had meaningful AI activity. We did not yet have one repeatable cross-functional view that connected spend, ownership, optimization opportunity, and business outcome. And because the environment included cloud-native components, managed AI services, AI SaaS, and a shared intelligence layer, you could not solve that with a single cloud cost report or a single vendor dashboard. We needed to understand the current state, but we also needed a repeatable way to keep understanding it as usage evolved.
And that's why the starting point versus goal framing on the slide matters. At the beginning, cost was visible mostly in aggregate. Attribution was limited, and the ROI methodology was inconsistent. Unit economics was still immature, and the target was a repeatable model. So visibility by initiative, structured attribution, credible ROI framework, and ultimately cost per business outcomes. That is a very different goal from trying to prove that AI is good. And if you heard that in Mr. Mackey's voice, good job. The goal was to make future funding decisions better. This is the architecture of the operating model. So the platform layer, which I know it's in the announcement, but the platform layer was essentially IBM, Apptio, different tool sets that they worked with us on. So platform layer gave us a technical system of record for cost and usage. That matters because without it, you do not have a stable place to start. But what we learned very quickly is that the platform alone does not answer the questions the business is actually asking. It can tell you about consumption, but it can't tell you whether or not the consumption pattern is appropriate, or whether or not the ownership model is credible, or whether the outcome is worth the spend. This is where the advisory and modeling layer comes in. So business metrics, attribution logic, evidence classification, scenario training, a way to connect TCO to business decisions instead of to dashboards. And we really became quite fond of the saying that tools are excellent at telemetry, but they're not automatically excellent at judgment.
And governance is mostly about judgment. What do we keep funding? What do we tune? What needs better data? What is ready for a broader rollout, and what is still directional? Without that second layer, you can end up with a lot of detail, but little clarity.
Or worse, a very polished dashboard that everyone is interpreting differently. So this role split was not just a delivery convenience, it was a deliberate part of the solution.
We organized the work around 3 questions that any executive can understand. What does the AI actually cost? Where is the waste? And is it worth it? That sequencing turned out to be important. If you start with ROI before you have credible cost visibility, you end up doing narrative math. If you optimize before you understand attribution, you shift cost without actually improving accountability. And if you only stop at optimization, you may reduce spend without ever improving decision quality.
So the 3-workstream model gave us a way to move from visibility to action to governance, for my friend in the back. It also helped with communication. Different stakeholders naturally care about different parts of the story. But the 3 workstreams gave us one shared structure to work from. And that made it easier to move the conversation forward without losing people in the technical details, which in this space is half the battle. So workstream 1 is where the discipline really starts. Before you talk about savings or ROI, you need to define the cost boundary and get honest about what is actually inside it. One thing we learned very quickly is that the first number is almost never the real number. So shared services, data movement, storage, change activity, shadow usage, incomplete metadata, all of these tend to sit outside of the first pass. This is not to disparage the efforts to getting to that first pass. It's just, the point is we need to understand like what it includes, what it excludes, and what do we need to change to make it stronger as we move forward. Even from the early data extracts, we could already see there was a lot going on, and so we could see enough scale to justify a more structured approach. So we're looking at a meaningful volume of recurring activity, a sizable concentration in a relatively small group of workflows, and enough repeated behavior to know this was not just occasional experimentation. And that matters because once you realize that this is recurring activity, you can start to ask better questions.
Questions like, which of these motions deserve the earliest attribution work? Which ones drive the most cost? Which ones are the best candidates for baseline comparison? Where do you focus first so the governance model gets traction? This led us to a very practical principle. Start with the recurring motions that matter most. Do not wait to solve every edge case before you build the model.
So the output of workstream 1 was not just a prettier report, it was a shared language for discussing the portfolio. We needed to know who owned the workload, how much are we spending on that workload to deliver, what kind of workload is it, what parts of the cost are direct or shared, and where is attribution strong versus where does it still need some work. Once you have that language, the quality of the conversation changes. People quit debating about what do the numbers mean, and they start having conversations about what do we do about it.
The before and after comparison on the slide looks simple, but that simplicity was valuable. Instead of aggregate AI cost, we could start talking about attributed views. Instead of vague usage, we could start separating major consumption patterns. Instead of assuming coverage, we could see where the coverage existed and where the exception backlog still lived.
That's a big shift. Visibility stops being abstract and starts becoming operational.
And from my side, it means we could finally discuss the work in the way that it matched how it actually functioned.
Which is why visibility is only useful if it shortens the distance to a decision.
Workstream 2 is where most people expect the story to get exciting, because this is the part where you start looking for waste and optimization opportunity. One thing we would emphasize is that AI optimization is broader than people assume. Yes, capacity and utilization matter, but they are not the whole game.
By the way, I'm starting to rank the slides in terms of quality by how many people take pictures of it.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah.
Sometimes I'm kind of surprised. I'm like, that one? All right, cool. So we looked at the usual suspects like right sizing, schedule alignment, lifecycle control, but just as important were questions like, are we using the right service level for this workload? Are we keeping endpoints open longer than the business case really justifies? Are we using a model whose cost profile actually matches the outcome requirement? The last one's a big one. I mean, who here doesn't want to use Opus to do your grocery schedule? I mean, I do. Model selection is often underappreciated because it sits at the intersection of technical preference, quality expectations, and cost discipline. It is a more strategic question than just asking whether or not utilization is high.
Exactly. The real question is not what is the cheapest option. It is what is the lowest cost option that still satisfies the business need with acceptable quality and risk. Once we started framing optimization that way, conversation started becoming much more useful.
Exactly.
These are the findings we can share publicly. And what I like about it is none of these issues are exotic. They're very normal. Demand and capacity do not always line up. Training approaches are not always matched to workload tolerance. Artifacts and checkpoints accumulate. Services stay active outside real need windows. Model choices are sometimes made for quality or speed without sufficiently explicit value case. What gave those findings more weight is that the supporting data showed the portfolio was not fat. A relatively small number of recurring motions drove a large share of the activity. That is useful because it tells you where governance and optimization will matter first.
We also saw that usage behavior mattered at least as much as static footprint. That changed where we expected to find waste, and it changed what kinds of controls looked valuable. Another important point here is what we did not do. We did not just force a premature ROI. We didn't want to make a claim just because we had operational signal. So we treated these findings as evidence that governance was necessary and that a stronger measurement model was worth building. So in other words, there was already enough to act on, but not quite enough to pretend that the business case was fully finished. So that distinction turned out to be really important because it let us make progress honestly and still waiting on the perfect data or overstating what we knew.
For a lot of organizations, this is where the whole conversation gets uncomfortable. Building AI is hard. Proving it changed the business is usually harder. The reason is simple. Most teams can show activity. Fewer can show attributed business benefits. Activity metrics are not meaningless, but they're not the same thing as value.
So it is easy to say that something is helping productivity. It is much harder to say exactly where or how much or based on which baseline or to what level of certainty is it helping. Leadership's not asking for perfection. What they really want is a funding model that they can trust. They want to know whether the evidence is weak, emerging, or strong. They want to understand trade-offs. They want to know which use case deserves more investment, which one needs rework, and quite honestly, which one probably needs to go by the wayside. The answer is not to invent one giant ROI heroic number.
The answer is to build a measurement path that is explicit about what is known, what is estimated, what is still missing, and what decisions should follow from that evidence state. This is the shift of mindset behind the next few slides.
All right, get your cameras ready. So the idea is not that every use case should immediately produce one perfect ROI number. The idea is that every use case should move through a disciplined evidence model. We start with inputs, not just TCO and architecture, but also monthly trends, usage drivers, baseline conditions, and the labor or cost to serve context that tells you what the business process looked like before the AI layer shows up. Cost is on one side, benefit is on the other. And benefit may come from a mix of throughput, reduced manual effort, faster completion, better containment, improved quality, or avoided rework, depending on the use case.
This is also where the next wave of data matters. We're specifically looking for month-by-month trends, pre-AI baselines, staffing levels before and after, time per task comparisons, and cost to serve indicators. These are the inputs that make a directional model stronger and move it towards something more defensible.
So then we classify the maturity of the evidence. Is this still experimental? Is it directional? Is it moving towards proven? The classification is not cosmetic. It affects how strong your funding claim should be. The next step in the model is to model both sides honestly. What I like about this method is that you can start to govern now and improve later, building the ship as you fly, so to speak.
You do not have to wait for perfect evidence to begin, but you have to be explicit about what kind of evidence you have, what you still need, and how that affects the confidence of the decision. This is probably the simplest rule in the entire presentation. If the metric only makes sense to the platform team, it is not enough for an ROI conversation. Technical activities metrics still matter. Requests, tokens, latency, automation volume, throughput, and model quality are all useful. But on their own, they do not explain why leadership should keep funding the motion.
So we need a paired metric structure. So activity on one side, business outcomes on the other. The business outcome does not have to be fancy. It might be containment rate, time to resolution, completion rate, cycle time to answer, transfers, escalations, manual touches, QA score, or some combination depending on the workflow. The point is that the metric needs to mean something outside of the technical team. Ideally, when possible, it should connect to a labor or a cost to serve baseline. So that is what lets you move from saying that the automation is busy to saying that it is changing the economics or effectiveness of the process.
This is what a useful operational dashboard has to do. It should not simply summarize the environment. It should create decision pressure. For us, the important pieces were portfolio view, attribution, business KPIs, evidence maturity, review cadence, and value value realization, and the actions that follow those.
And so we want to say something explicitly here because it came up in our review. This dashboard works really good for NRG. We're not saying that every organization in the room should adopt this exact dashboard. It works good for NRG because it answers the questions that the business was asking. So, which use cases are active? Who owns them? How much is it costing us to deliver on them? What kind of metrics do we have in order to measure them? What does the evidence look like? Where are things going? Where are the data gaps? And just as importantly, what do we do next with this? Scale it, rework it, stop it, improve the metadata, tighten the controls, ask for a better baseline, or change the review cadence. One of the reassuring things to think about this work is realizing that most organizations are earlier in the journey than they think. One of the folks on my team is Tamara here? And there she is in the back. One of the folks on my team, her name happens to be Tamara, is on the FinOps for AI working group. And several weeks ago, she was on a working group call, and she messages the group, and she says, hey, we're in this call, and everybody's talking about it, and we all agree, like, everybody's still just trying to figure this out. So if that's the AI working group for the FinOps Foundation, if you haven't already figured it out, like, you can rest a little easier. It's not a criticism that you haven't figured it out. Nobody's figured it out yet completely, so we're all just going to work through it. One of the things that I came into FinOps in 2021, and I often think about, like, man, wouldn't it have been cool, and some of you, this probably fits, but wouldn't it have been cool who've, like, come into FinOps in, like, 2015? Like, oh, man, to be there, you know, first steps on the moon kind of a thing, like, holy crap, that would have been awesome. But that's where we are. Like, in 10 years, people are going to say, man, I wish I was right back there in, like, 24, 25, 26, figuring this whole AI thing out. AI financial management is still maturing. The point is not to immediately jump to some sort of perfect end state. There's an old Army saying that says a bad decision now is better than a good decision later. You've got to start somewhere. Start with what you have. Don't try and wait till you have some sort of perfect system or perfect amount of data figured out to get started. The practical near-term goal for most organizations is a steady walk state. You know the major workloads, you have usable attribution, you have a handful of trusted business metrics, you have a review cadence that leadership takes seriously, and once you reach that point, better decisions become possible very quickly. You can spot weak claims earlier, you can ask for the right additional data, and you can identify where optimization and value evidence are reinforcing each other and where they are diverging.
And most importantly, you stop treating every use case as if it deserves the same level of clarity and certainty on day one. That maturity framing helped us keep our expectations realistic while still making progress. And I can say, while we were working through this process, a couple of things we learned and maybe some advice. Number one, this takes longer than you think it's going to take. You think it's going to take a month, probably 2 to 3, maybe more. The other thing that we ran into is some business units or business personnel probably don't even want to tell you some of the information that you're asking for.
Okay,
surprisingly.
that's the biggest chuckle we've gotten so far from like the obvious folks.
So I mean, from my perspective, if you can get a C-level endorsement to kind of drive the agenda, it's very important.
So Rob, why do you think some people don't want to see the data or see the reporting?
Honestly, I think they don't want to let you know how long and how much it costs.
Fair enough.
All right, we will close with a practical version. If you only take a few things back with you, start with the visible use cases. Do not begin with the most complex or politically loaded thing in the portfolio if you can help it. Define a minimum metadata set and set an honest TCO boundary. Not a perfect one, an honest one. Make clear what is in, what is out, and what would be needed to improve it. Connect the activity to ownership and pair the technical metrics with business outcomes people actually care about.
So, and when you can, add the baseline comparison. What was the process before? How many people were involved? How long did it take? What did it cost to deliver? These comparisons are what turn an interesting story into a stronger business case. Then launch a cadence, review the portfolio, track realization against the model, scale what's working, rework what isn't, stop what needs to stop. You do not need perfect data to start. You're not going to have it anyway. But you do need enough structure so that the next decision is better than the last. So that's the message that we wanted to leave you with. Build the model, strengthen the evidence over time, and use that discipline to govern the next investment decision well. Thank you, and we are here for questions. Somebody has a microphone. Oh, there's.
Hi, Lisa Harwood. So on the slide, you have set an honest TCO boundary. Could you give us a couple examples of what an honest TCO boundary might look like, and maybe what a dishonest TCO boundary might look like?
So an honest TCO boundary it means, let's just say you spent a lot of money on the training to get this thing stood up. But you don't really want to include that in your TCO model, right? Because nobody wants to have to explain that. But the reality is you're going to have to be honest about it. A lot of what we talked about, and hopefully it came through, is you've got to start with what you actually have, not what you wanted to have. And so an honest TCO boundary is going to be something like, but I don't want to include the millions of dollars it took me to, build this thing that we may be breaking even on, or just, saving a little bit of money. So that would be one example. Does that help?
And I would add that, especially up on the front here, right, when we're just starting to develop AI initiatives, the first initiatives are going to cost more. And it's okay to be honest about that. That's what we're looking for.
No, that was great. Thank you. No, I don't use through. Okay.
I've never seen the FinOps Foundation Cube microphone before.
Yeah, me either. That's kind of cool.
Hi. So given some or most of unpredictable costs sits in application layer, how do you start a visibility on that? You work with the engineering teams, each of the teams, like there is something like what is the starting point to have visibility on the application layer?
So I'm going to let Rob start with that, and then I'll come back. Is there any way we could turn it up just a little bit?
Yeah, so what I would say is you have to talk to the engineering teams first, the application support teams. You have to talk to everybody. And again, sometimes they don't want to tell you the information you're looking for. Start with engineering teams, work your way up from there.
And you're probably going to have to validate and verify things, like talk to the engineering teams. One of the interesting things when we started working with NRG on this is they were like, everything's in Google. And then we found out very quickly everything's not in Google, right? Now, some of how we found that out is because we had ended up talking to another team who was doing some reporting on the application layer, but some of it also is just because we had visibility into the cloud spend, and we were able to go, hey, but what about this?
And honestly, the engineering team, they may not even know everything that they need to tell you.
Okay. And I will say, kind of in relation to that and sort of a lot of other things we worked on, depending on how large the organization is, these people over here may have never even heard of this team over here. And especially with the number of teams being stood up to work on these types of things, you may have a new team that just sits over here and nobody really knows who they are or how to reach out to them or who their upline is.
There you go.
You had a slide about GPU versus ROI and paired technical metrics versus business metrics. That seems to be a really like pivotal decision, is mapping those. Can you talk a little bit about the discovery, mapping, and measuring process for your business outcomes?
For the business outcomes themselves. So again, it kind of starts with like, okay, we see this workload, right? Or we see this spend. What does it do? Like, what is the workload itself? And so from there, we go to the team who helped design the solution, but then we end up going to, and I can't tell you the actual team, but we go to the team who is the one that benefits from this AI solution, and we just start having conversations about, so what is important to you? Like, if everything in your world is going perfectly, give me some of the measures that you would want to put on a slide that you would want all of the leadership to see, and that becomes some of that those are the business metrics. So it could, I'm trying to, stuck in this example, so I don't want to, it could be something like, how many medications were dispensed that were accurate, right? What is your percentage of accuracy of medication dispensing? If you're trusting a human nurse to do that, we know what the error rates on that are. We've been doing it a very, very long time, and the business technology or medical technology is all about like, how do we make that faster and more accurate? Because when the wrong med is dispensed and given to a patient, bad things happen, right? So in that case, that would be one of the business metrics. So we let the team define for us what the business metrics should be. Does that answer your question?
Figuring out how to scale that and how to measure it is really...
So, okay. So hopefully, and this is going to depend on, are you already doing this or are you starting one? Because if you're like looking at a potential AI solution, that's beautiful, because again, you just go to the team and you go, well, what do you want to do? If we could develop a solution that works perfectly for you, what would it improve? Like, what would be different? And if we could reduce our error rate by 10%, okay, so how are you tracking your error rate now? And whatever that is, like we get the baseline, we're going to have to figure out how do we continue to track that going forward. And in terms of scaling, because if you're talking about like, I have a human nurse that is pulling 40 meds per shift, and however many nurses you have, like that's your scale. If you're using an AI tool to do it, and it's pulling more functions, then you're going to have logging and things like that in place to be able to track each one of those actions and then be able to analyze that. The scaling, though, is going to happen on like, I mean, the solution we looked at had 30 functions for like one workload, and so you're tracking thousands and thousands of actions on that one function, possibly daily. So you start to decide like, which of the functions do you really, really want to track? And in some cases, you run into problems where, and in this case, there were several of these where you go, so what was it like when a human was doing it? And there wasn't a human doing it before. Like, this is now net new that the AI is doing that a human being just couldn't do that. So you're tracking the baseline just in terms of guesses.
And I also think the business outcomes actually can change or improve as you go, so you constantly need to follow up.
We'll just take one more question because we are on time. You are next in line, so
follow up on this. What was specifically for the NERG case study that you guys found as the surprising or like results, right, in this process from the aggregated level to an initiative level that actually even improve or refine the process that you guys are putting, even the business outcomes and the metrics? So I'm trying to figure out specifically, of course, what you guys can share that was a very surprising or highlights or anything that comes in this.
Do you want to take that first?
A tough one with
Yeah.
what I can say and not say.
I mean, I'm going to say, honestly, one of the most surprising things, and Rob warned me about this going into it. So did one of my folks in the back. I didn't want to believe them. That they're like, what if people don't want to actually see what you're reporting on? What if they don't want to see ROI? And I'm like, that's crazy talk.
I wouldn't.
Everybody's going to, no, they don't. And so I worked in healthcare prior to coming to FinOps. And the reality is we all know somebody, typically it's an older dude, but we all know somebody who's like, hey, don't you want to go get that checked out? And they're like, nah. And you're like, that could be cancer. And they're like, And they're okay with not knowing the answer. Because the answer in some ways is maybe worse, than just kind of acting like it's not. And I think in this case, there's a similar type of psychology going of, I don't want to know how bad it is. But worse, I don't want you to know how bad it is, and I sure don't want my boss in the back of the room to know how bad it is. But in some cases, and I think one of the shocking things, and hopefully it's okay that we share this, is like one of the outcomes that we came across is that like customer satisfaction scores went up dramatically. So even if you're not saving human time or money, that increase in customer satisfaction has to translate into something. Why would you not want somebody to hear that? Why would you not want that on a graph? We already knew you spent a crap ton of money. Somebody's writing that check. They know that. Why would you not want those positive things also reported on? Thank you, everybody. We're going to be around.
Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, producer Andrew here. Thanks for watching. Check out the rest of our channel for more FinOps content. Like, subscribe, and leave questions and comments for our speakers. We appreciate your support.